Welcome back to Late Night MASH. Now, listen, it's been hard to ignore for the last few weeks, but the Taliban are back. Between them dominating the news and Benifer being back together, you could be forgiven for thinking it was just the early noughties again. I'm half expecting to suddenly find myself in possession of a landline phone and a virginity. And I don't want to have to lose that again, because it was quite a taxing affair last time. Yesterday, Dominic Raab appeared before a Foreign Affairs Select Committee and he seemed confused and frazzled. And this was just in front of his fellow MPs. It's not a good look for a man who might have to potentially negotiate with the Taliban. Based on this display, I feel like they're going to say, look, we've had Kabul and we want Leeds and most of Wales, and he'd just panic and shit out his own liver. Raab claimed that UK intelligence suggested the Taliban were unlikely to take control of Kabul in 2021, and he did not say how many UK-affiliated nationals are yet to return from Afghanistan. His confusion was unsurprising, considering in the weeks leading up to the Taliban seizing power in Afghanistan, Raab's performance was less Lady Gaga in A Star Is Born and more Zac Efron in A Star Is Born, in that Zac Efron wasn't remotely involved in A Star Is Born. Reports claim that in the 6 months leading up to the Taliban takeover, neither the Afghan nor Pakistani foreign ministers received a single phone call from our foreign secretary, an accusation he denies. But he did initially refuse to return from a holiday in Crete as Kabul fell. Maybe he wanted to stay longer to find the perfect novelty T-shirt. You know, I went to Crete and all I got was a frantic message saying, "Where the fuck are you?" Raab also refused to confirm the date he actually went on holiday and referred to the committee's questions on the subject as a fishing expedition. Listen, a fishing expedition? The man's mind is obviously still on holiday. He's just listing the activities he did while he was away. Listen, that question is clearly a fishing expedition and then a midnight skinny dip. You're all the breakfast buffet while I'm at the omelette station. In conclusion, paragliding. The Sunday Times has reported that had Raab returned earlier from holiday, up to 1,000 more people could have been evacuated from Afghanistan. In fairness, if I'd spent 40k on a holiday, I'd want to get my money's worth too, right? Raab spent £40,000 on his beach. What kind of beach holiday costs 40 grand? Listen, no wonder he didn't come back earlier. He was probably too busy getting sucked off by a mermaid. To top it all, when accused of paddleboarding while Kabul fell, Raab's defence was that he couldn't have been paddleboarding because the sea was closed. The sea was closed. That doesn't sound like an excuse. That sounds like someone trying to describe a frozen lake for the first time. It was like the sea, but when I tried to jump into it, it was closed? There has been surprise expressed that, at the time of recording, Boris Johnson has not yet sacked Dominic Raab. But is it that surprising? Refusing to sack people is as natural to Boris Johnson as racism, or using the phrase, "I would wear one, but, you know, it just feels different." He doesn't know how many kids he has, OK? There's no way the guy is wrapping it up. Johnson has also refused to sack Home Secretary Priti Patel after almost 200 asylum seekers caught COVID at an immigration detention centre, despite warnings about overcrowding from Public Health England. But look, at the end of the day, being mean to people and mistreating refugees is central to the personal brand of a woman whose political history suggests that, were it legally possible, she would happily deport Paddington Bear. Johnson's inability to sack anyone has also benefited Education Secretary Gavin Williamson, who is in charge of schools. You remember schools, right? Teaching, learning, exams, qualifications. These are just some of the things that used to happen in schools before Gavin Williamson was put in charge of them. The man has negatively impacted so many young lives that he should either be sacked or made a duke. Parents, teachers and papers from across the political spectrum have repeatedly called on Williamson to resign or be sacked over the exam algorithm that disadvantaged state school students and the decision to send primary school kids back to school for just one day in January. So why is he still there? Well, I guess if I were Johnson, I'd probably want to keep Williamson around too, just so I knew I wasn't the only man in the room who'd personally failed a generation of children. Presumably, Williamson is biding his time until literacy rates fall far enough that nobody can actually read the headlines about how fucking shit he is. It feels like the only person who actually faced consequences this year was Matt Hancock. But even he didn't get sacked. He resigned. And he didn't resign because of questionable NHS contracts or lying about the PPE shortage or the fact that when you're in charge of health, it's generally considered suboptimal if everyone dies. He resigned after breaking social distancing guidelines. In layman's terms, he resigned for touching a butt. And Johnson obviously couldn't sack him for touching a butt. Boris Johnson has touched more butts than Andrex. Johnson instead said that he backed Hancock and considered the matter closed, which is a big vote of confidence, given that months earlier Johnson had criticised Hancock in a text exchange with former advisor Dominic Cummings, calling him totally fucking hopeless. Ironically, fucking was the one thing Matt Hancock wasn't totally hopeless at. At the end of the day, we all know why Johnson is reluctant to take action and sack people. Because if incompetence, cronyism or mishandling the pandemic are reasons to lose your job, then he knows that he has to go. If he sacks one of them, he'd have to sack all of them. And worst of all, he'd have to sack himself. And we all know how powerful Boris Johnson's sack can be. But what that leaves us with is political leaders who operate without consequence. And without consequence, there's no imperative to improve. And when people don't have to improve, horrific shit like this happens. But when politicians don't have to improve, it's somehow even worse and people die. So let me address the Prime Minister directly now. Of course he watches Dave. He needs Mock the Week repeats to remind him what he's been up to. Mr Johnson, take it from someone who recently got sacked and moved on to bigger and better... and moved on to different things. It can be a character-building and enriching experience. So why not try it? Try it on Raab, Williamson, Patel. Hell, maybe even try it on yourself. Because at the end of the day, all I want is the country's leader to be a rich, blonde man with a long track record of saying you're fired. And when has that ever ended badly for anyone?